So I'm out in the backyard today and had to dig out and pull out some volunteer mulberry bushes that were taking over my bird feeder here. The other thing I'm doing today is kind of experimenting with my military poncho there. I've got a couple trips planned. One that I'm going to take here pretty quick in May is down to the Amazon with some guys from Randall Adventure, and I'm going to bring this along. And the other would be in June. I'm going down to the Utah desert, and this was another trip that I'm supposed to bring one of these ponchos on. Just kind of figuring out how they come together and ways to make shelters out of them. Neighbors all probably think I'm crazy. Obviously learned today that I would do this probably lower to the ground than I did it today in the wild, and also there's some grommets right there in the middle that if I was actually going to sleep in this sucker, I would line those out as well. But it's very, very windy out today, and just this flimsy little setup I did today really seems to work pretty darn good. The other thing I did today was monkey around with my mosquito net for the jungle, obviously. What I'm going to try to do is figure out a way to make that work in combination with the poncho so that I have a waterproof and bug-proof shelter. I'll probably have to do an overnight with that though pretty quick here next couple weeks, because I got to leave in a few weeks. Now what we've got here is a Lodge 12-inch Dutch oven. Now this is definitely not something you'd take backpacking because it's definitely very, very heavy. But what you can do is, if you're car camping, you see it's got these legs on the bottom, and I'll show you why that's useful later. And then it's got this top that's got a nice rim in there to set coals on, and use it around the house if you don't want to heat up your house with your oven. I've had this one for years and years. Obviously you can tell it's been well used. And I'll show you how to make a couple things since I'm done with my other work today. So what we'll do is we'll pour this 12-ounce beer into our Dutch oven there. Something that's always in my campsite, if I'm car camping at least, is self-rising flour. The reason is it's so versatile. And the reason it's called self-rising flour is that it's got baking soda and baking powder in it. And you don't need to add yeast, and you can still make bread with it. So I'm going to add 3 cups of this to the Dutch oven. Another thing that makes it into my campsite quite frequently when I'm car camping is sugar. So we're going to take 3 tablespoons of this and add it to our Dutch oven. And now that we've got that stuff in there, I'm just going to stir this up a little bit. It needs to be fairly lumpy. You don't need to knead this at all. And once I've got it stirred up and combined, the next thing I'm going to do is kind of spread it out fairly evenly so that it's not thicker in one part than the other. And next I'm going to take some butter pieces and kind of evenly distribute them out over the top. If you don't have butter, that's cool. Well, I've got some coals going, and obviously if I was in the woods, I wouldn't use charcoal. And the trick with a Dutch oven is to put less coals on the bottom and more coals on the top. Now you see it's got these little legs that make it so that it sits right down on top of the coals. So you can see I've got a lot more coals on top than I have on the bottom. It's real hot. I've got a little tool here that helps me with this. You can pick it up, move it around. Rotating it around sometimes helps keep the heat on the bottom even so you don't burn your bread. Also, when it comes time to lift the lid off, you just hook this underneath there and lift it. Also, when you're baking, sometimes you need to turn the lid to just make sure you get nice even heat. The trick is more heat coming from the top than from the bottom so that it actually works like an oven. Okay, so I'm just going to do my first check here. It's been about 10 minutes. You don't want to let this stuff get out of hand. You should look at it every once in a while, see how it's coming. You don't want to burn it. Ooh, that's looking good. Actually, I think much done. And just knocking a little bit more of the dust off of this. I'm going to put this back on here. Move this off of the heat. I'm going to sweep those coals up and put them into my barbecue. One thing to remember about cooking with a Dutch oven is that this thing is going to stay hot for a long time. So even if something's not totally done, you should probably take the coals off early because it'll continue to cook. And this will stay nice and warm for us for quite some time. I might even have to crack the little bit to make sure we don't overcook that.